And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, starting tomorrow and running all weekend long in downtown Los Angeles at the LA Convention Center, it's the Anime Expo, where fans of Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z can see all the latest offerings. Just be careful if you walk outside the LA Convention Center and walk onto Figueroa Boulevard, because there's
a lot of prostitution, a lot of crimes.
And that subject comes up at every city council meeting.
Well, yes, it does.
Thanks to our buddy 3-Inch Shrimp. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, we know that there is an insurance crisis going on right here in the state of California. Homeowners are being dropped from their policies. Blue chip companies are not selling new policies. And companies that are currently operational in California keep threatening to leave the state. All of this is going on while premiums are shooting through the stratosphere.
And nothing that Ricardo Lara's big policy change has done has stopped any of that. Right, Ricardo?
I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
I don't even live in a fire zone, and my rates went up 20%. And I've never filed a claim with State Farm. But this is something that's not unique to me. It's going on all over. One of the criticisms that we hear over and over and over again is that homeowners can't get a call returned by the California Department of Insurance. Ricardo Lara doesn't have time for that, but he has time to travel around the globe on the insurance industry's dime, partying with DJ Kitty Glitter.
And going to seminars in Colombia. You know, because there's a lot of insurance to be discussed there.
That's what they're known for. And anytime the heat starts getting to him, he says he's going to launch a study or an investigation and get to the bottom of it, and then we never hear about it again. And Randy, he's back to his old tricks.
There has been a lot of talk lately, especially after the Southern California wildfires that decimated the Pacific Palisades and the Altadena area, that there are a lot of people getting denied claims, whether it's through the FAIR Plan or State Farm, because their home wasn't burned down, but they have smoke damage and the home is unlivable. This is not a new problem. This has been a problem that has faced wildfire victims in every wildfire we've had, going back to before Ricardo Lara was even insurance commissioner. But now, near the end of his term, as he's termed out from this job and leaves us for total obscurity, he says he wants to launch a task force into making sure insurance companies cover smoke damage.
I'm sure he'll get right to the bottom of it.
For more, here's CBS Sacramento.
Well, guys, right now there is no state or federal standard for smoke damage, no agreed upon level of danger or how to properly clean it up. So insurers often deny.
Yeah, what have we seen? State Farm or the FAIR Plan will give you $200 and say, rent a shop vac.
And you have 6 figures worth of damage done to your home due to the smoke.
So insurers often deny smoke damage claims unless you can prove there is permanent physical damage from smoke. But of course, health experts warn smoke damage can be invisible, leaving behind toxic levels of chemicals and heavy metals that may require expensive remediation to make the home safe to live in again.
It's so funny. How long did this state campaign on billboards that say smoke kills when it comes to cigarettes? But smoke from wildfires, we don't care about.
Well, and you look at the pictures of these homes that have suffered from smoke damage. They basically look melted. It's not just that your home burns down and it's a pile of ashes. If your home melts, that's no good either.
So we recently sat down to discuss this issue with Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara.
There's no real set standards around
let's talk
these
about
issues.
That. One of the biggest complaints we're getting
Correct.
are from people whose houses survive.
Correct.
And they have smoke damage. But
what does it say that he knows about this problem, has been in this job for 6 years, and hasn't done a damn thing about it?
I'm surprised he agreed to a sit down.
You know what?
Maybe he thought CBS Sacramento was short for DJ Kitty Glitter.
Could be.
You know what's the worst part of that? Is that people come up to me and say, I don't know what's worse. And I feel guilty saying this, I almost prefer that my house was a total loss, having to deal with the smoke claim issue. It was horrible because...
Him having to feign compassion is quite a sight.
You know how you can tell someone's faking compassion? They emphasize words like this.
It was horrible.
Horrible.
A lot of phlegm there.
It was horrible.
Bless you.
It was horrible. Because there are no set standards for how you mitigate your home against wildfire smoke.
Wait, you're the guy in charge.
It's not as if you're writing letters to the editor over at the LA Times. You're the one that gets to set the policies.
And who benefits here is the insurance company.
So the Department of Insurance has commissioned a task force to...
This is like Ricardo Lara's investigation into State Farm. It's something that makes a headline, will take forever, and whatever results we find of this will be long after he's not in this job anymore.
Well, this is a basketball team that's up by 5 points with 20 seconds left to go in the game and a 24-second clock going. All you have to do is run out the clock and you win.
The Department of Insurance has commissioned a task force to develop a first-in-the-nation smoke damage standard that could be a blueprint for a national standard. Today, they announced the task force members, many of whom we've interviewed for our ongoing insurance investigation, like high-profile insurance consumer advocate Amy Bach and Deputy Insurance Commissioner Tony Signorelli, along with public health experts.
Oh, great. Ferrer's going to be on it.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Your home is damaged by smoke, and you're relying on her to get money from State Farm.
Smoke remediation specialists and representatives from the insurance industry.
Oh, of course.
And I love that they're pretending like other states are going to copy anything Ricardo Lara is doing.
They make up the task force that will determine that set standard. You can see the full list of members on our website. Once this standard is set, it'll finally help solidify exactly what insurers must cover when it comes to smoke damage and how to best clean it up.
Yeah, but when's that going to happen?
Long after he's out of office.
We will be following up on their work, and we will continue to investigate California's insurance crisis.
Yeah, this is nothing.
So that's what's going on right now over at the California Department of Insurance. The insurance industry, which has been, let's just say, contributing to Ricardo Lara's extravagant lifestyle throughout the years, is now so frustrated, even with Ricardo Lara's performance, that they're now talking about repealing Prop 103.
They want to get something on the ballot in front of the voters to change California's signature insurance law. For more on this, here's ABC 10 in Sacramento.
In the face of California's home insurance crisis, a group of independent insurance agents and others in the industry are now floating the idea of a ballot initiative. They say voters could change the proposition passed nearly 40 years ago that governs.
You think California voters are so up to date on the issues they'll understand a word of what this is?
Well, we don't understand anything that we vote on, but I know that people are frustrated with what's going on with the insurance industry here right now.
40 years ago that governs the state's insurance marketplace. ABC10's Becca Habecker joins us in studio to explain.
Homeowners and renters alike are feeling the effects of California's insurance crisis. Policies are increasingly unavailable, and those that are increasingly unaffordable for many people.
It's so funny. We're 7 months into the year, 7 months since Ricardo Lara put forth his plan that he was working on for 2 years that was supposed to stop all this, and, well, it's only getting worse.
Well, keep in mind that none of this is working the way it's supposed to. If you don't live in an area that's at fire risk, you're seeing your premiums jump by dramatic margins, like yours truly, where I do not live in a fire zone, and my rates just went up by 20%, in part because they want me to help pay for what happened in Altadena, Malibu, Pacific Palisades. But it's beyond that, though. Because the FAIR plan, which in theory is meant for those who live in areas that involve such extreme risk that no company would be willing to insure them, homeowners in places that are not in fire zones are being pushed on the FAIR Plan for no good reason with no good explanation.
The majority of FAIR Plan policies are in state-defined low wildfire risk zones. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't. It's like if you're operating a hotel and you take the people in the wheelchairs and you put them in the normal rooms, and you take the able-bodied people and you give them the handicap rooms. No one's getting what the room was meant for.
Some in the insurance industry blame Proposition 103. Passed by 51% of voters in 1988, Prop 103 set the framework for California's insurance regulations, including requiring insurance companies to get permission from the elected state insurance commissioner before raising rates.
And in those days, we elected insurance commissioners that had some understanding of the insurance industry.
Yes, but we decided to go against the grain on that one when we elected Ricardo Lara. And with Ricardo Lara termed out, if the insurance industry is now looking at getting rid of that position as an elected position, and I assume would put it under the umbrella of the governor so the governor could appoint, that shows you how much confidence they have in the next round of candidates.
Which includes this jackass.
There's been some hogwash.
I think he'd probably be the favorite.
And allowing consumer groups to intervene in that process. Critics gathered for a panel discussion Tuesday morning in Sacramento, saying Prop 103 has kept rates artificially low for decades, causing insurance companies to now pull back on the business they're doing here.
I love the argument. Well, the problem is that we haven't been able to rip you off nearly as much as we want to.
Well, they can do it. They just have to go through him. And it's certain companies that can do it, and it's by certain margins that they can raise it by. And we can just hit everyone equally. And, if we want to try to make the FAIR Plan solvent, we can hit you again. It's very situational, and it's situational in ways that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If the prices are going up because the risk is increased, well, then at least you understand why your rates are going up, and there's an answer that makes sense. If everything is just artificial and subject to his whims, then how can you explain that to anyone? How does it make sense? And the answer is it doesn't.
Proposition 103 should be reformed or repealed. It doesn't meet consumer needs. It has outlived its usefulness and has created a disastrous insurance market.
I also spoke with the author of Prop 103 and founder of consumer group Consumer Watchdog, which intervenes in the rate request process. He says Prop 103 has saved consumers billions of dollars in rate increases over the past nearly 4 decades, and that we'd be worse off without it.
Proposition 103 has saved people $154 billion over the last years just on their auto insurance. It's equal or bigger savings.
Why are they doubling now, though?
That's a good question. You notice, by the way, that Newsom is nowhere on this subject. And whenever he's asked about it, he always punts and says, well, this is Ricardo Lara's territory.
Yeah, he doesn't want to touch this one.
Equal or bigger savings on homeowners insurance. It's protected people against price gouging.
Currently, only voters can substantially change Prop 103 by way of another ballot initiative. Critics suggest someone could submit a ballot initiative for the 2026 election that would strike just a few words from Prop 103, which would then allow 2/3 of lawmakers to potentially overhaul the whole thing.
You mean the same lawmakers that are bought and paid for by the insurance industry?
Now, here's the thing. I would be willing to get rid of Proposition 103. However, you need to make sure that you replace it with something better, because it is possible to replace it with something worse. And if you allow the legislature to do it, I can almost guarantee you'd end up with something worse.
Consumer Watchdog's founder says he doubts such an effort would be successful, and if it lands on the ballot, his group will fight it. We'll be following this story.
There you go. That's the latest with California's continuing insurance crisis.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Where are you going this summer, Ricky?
Oh, I would love to know his travel schedule. And Consumer Watchdog has also said that they're going to go after Ricardo Lara regardless of what office he runs for. So if he runs for local government in Southern California, I know he was rumored to be a potential candidate for the LA County Board of Supervisors, and at one point was rumored to be a candidate for lieutenant governor. Neither one of those jobs really has anything to do with the insurance industry, but their hate for him, which is the hot, hot hate of 1,000 suns, is so hot that they said they're going to continue to go after him and expose him to voters and expose the poor performance that he provided voters and consumers during his time as insurance commissioner. But it almost seems as if Ricardo Lara, who's been a career politician and is now termed out as insurance commissioner, isn't even going to run for any other office. I mean, that's where the phrase that pays came from when he talked about knowing that he is now the most hated man in California because he approved so many rate hikes.
This is what Ricardo Lara said at an insurance industry symposium just a few weeks ago. This was his own words.
I may be criticized and dragged through the mud for it and get my wig snatched, as the gay guys say.
He doesn't talk like someone who plans on running for another office. He talks like someone who already has the next gig lined up and he thinks he has retirement money, which would certainly explain a whole lot. Let's go to John in Danville. John, hello.
Yeah, I'm not just speaking of State Farm. I've had State Farm for since I was a kid, so it's about over 60 years. And in reference to the insurance rates going up and why are they going up, I'll tell you what my agent told me. He told me they were not allowed to raise rates during COVID, and then after COVID, there was an election for the insurance commissioner's position, so he wouldn't allow them to raise rates, and now they're making up for lost time. I have a couple of properties in Reno, and you don't have any crisis like this whatsoever. One place is 2,750 square feet. My premium's less than $1,000 a year, and I have some very thorough coverage. So, it's a state issue, and it's the manner in which we conduct business here as a state. And I think these guys are just making up for lost time and no opportunity to raise rates when they should have been raising them, and they're catching up now. Those are my thoughts.
Well, and it's also that we're governed by absentee landlords. We elect people based on their position on abortion or how much they hate Donald Trump or Ukraine or climate change or whatever. A lot of subjects that have nothing to do with anything regarding statewide constitutional offices. And then we elect someone to be the insurance commissioner, and we're all surprised when we find out he doesn't know anything about insurance. Well, that's not the criteria on which you evaluated him. You voted for him because you like his position on gay rights or abortion or whatever. And then he gets into office and he's in over his skis, and he's been essentially co-opted by the insurance industry or other groups that underwrite his campaigns. Well, start electing people who know something about the subject matter, and maybe you won't live in a perpetual crisis. Thank you so much for the call, sir. I appreciate it. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do what George Gascon likes to do to himself in the middle of the night because he's got nothing else to do these days.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Just search for The John Phillips Show on YouTube. You can like and subscribe and share those episodes with your friends or family. Put them in your Facebook groups. You can get the KABC app in Southern California, the KSFO app in Northern California, the KMJ app in the Central Valley, any of those, and you can take these things on the road with you. You going on vacation? Get a whole bunch of podcasts loaded up. Let's say you're going to Tijuana for the weekend.
There's a lot of prostitution, a lot of crimes.
It sounds like she's reading right off the Yelp page. And Randy, we're now on the air in Fresno.
Every Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m., you can hear the Fix California Hour with John Phillips and Randy Wang, the Central Valley on KMJ in Fresno. That's a massive station covering the entire Central Valley based in Fresno. AM 580 if you happen to be driving through that area. Maybe you are. It's a holiday weekend. And if you want to listen to it on the stream, go to kmjnow.com or download the KMJ Now app.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And this edition takes us to San Jose.
In San Jose, where Mayor Matt Mahan has been cracking down on homeless encampments, he now has a court order to crack down on the drug dealers that target those homeless encampments.
Good for him.
For more, here's Cron 4.
Welcome back. For years, the city of San Jose says St. James Park has been a hub for crime, drug dealing, and unhoused people.
Yeah, it's like the San Jose's Tenderloin.
Every town has one.
Yeah, now city leaders are telling those dealers in the area, get out or get arrested. Crop 4's Jack Mulmud reports from St. James Park.
Ricardo and Giovanna Mendez come to St. James Park at least once a week to hand out food to dozens of unhoused people.
I'd rather give it out to people that need it than to toss it in the trash, so I'd rather see a smile than,
So is this your nearly expired food?
Oh, I'm sure. Anything low salt, too.
Is this you accidentally bought on Amazon quick cook oats and you really need the regular oats because they're much better in cookie recipes? So now you're trying to figure out who you can donate your quick cook oats to?
Any chip that's sour cream and onion.
Those living here appreciate it.
It's a good place to find a meal, for one.
Wait. Is that guy's mouth full, or did they change his voice for the witness protection program?
Well, maybe he's wanted for something in another state, and they didn't want to put him in any jeopardy.
Appreciate it.
It's a good place to find a meal, for one.
It sounds like he's eating a cheeseburger while talking.
Yeah, no, that's what you're supposed to do to someone who shot at Paul Castellano.
It's a good place to find a meal, for one. Being homeless or struggling.
St. James Park is considered one of the epicenters of homelessness in downtown San Jose. The city says it's been this way for years, adding the drug issue is becoming rampant.
Sounds like L.A.
Yeah, shouldn't Karen Bass be hosting a press conference?
Cron 4 came across this person suffering an overdose at the park on Tuesday afternoon. Paramedics told us off camera it was opioid related.
I'm in here.
What did you think it was?
The sad part about this is if San Jose is successful, they're not going to reform their behavior. They're just going to push them all to Oakland.
I'm in here fentanyl everywhere.
They are damaging our community. They're making the park inaccessible.
Mayor Matt Mahan hopes the buck stops with him.
And so we're taking a new approach.
That approach is a new court order by the city that targets around 8 specific drug dealers who have already been in the justice system, adding if they're seen within 100 yards of St.
Wait, so California's laws are so backwards that you have known drug dealers who have been in the system before, and the best we can do is file a restraining order to keep them out of the park?
Well, they don't regard them as being violent offenders. So if they're no threat to the community, then you can handle it administratively.
Adding if they're seen within 100 yards of St. James Park, they will be arrested.
We don't have to catch them actually dealing drugs in the park at this point. They've already been caught and convicted of doing that multiple times in the past. Now, their mere presence in the park is breaking the law.
Oh, I like that. Okay, now I see what he's doing here. They've been arrested because of California's system. They get right out. So this is really the only thing he can do. We can arrest you over and over and over again, or we can put a restraining order out on you.
It's kind of like what Bill Asaley is doing to get around the sanctuary state law. If you've been deported and you're back, then that's a felony. And that way we're not getting you on an immigration issue. We're getting you on a felony, a warrant. And it's a way to make sure that that person is lawfully and legally picked up by the feds and the state is forced to cooperate. And it's a way to get around the spirit of the sanctuary state, sanctuary city laws. What he's doing is essentially a workaround to enforce quality of life laws, even if the state of California doesn't want him to do it. He found a loophole.
Well, many homeless advocates who...
Oh, you knew there was going to be part of this to the story?
Of course.
Well, many homeless advocates who do work here in St. James and many unhoused people who live in this park say that they're supportive of getting rid of the drug dealers who frequent this park area, but they say they want to stay in this park because that's where a lot of them are fed and offered resources.
And that's where the drug trade is. Let's be honest about what the motivation is.
Why do you think they're at that park to begin with?
They're not there for the slides.
He's focusing on the symptom, not the problem.
How many homeless people are you housing, jackass?
We need to defund every single one of these organizations. One of the great things about Elon looking into U.S. aid is that we now know what your tax dollars are funding. And so many of these organizations are just straight up poisonous. And once you just scratch the surface and you figure out how many of these destructive groups are being financed by you, the taxpayers, we need to cut them all off.
He's focusing on the symptom, not the problem.
Todd Linkton, a homeless advocate, says Mayhem should also target drug dealers around the city, not just those targeting unhoused people.
I think they are.
In any sane world, he would be on everyone's short list to be the next governor of California. He's a guy who is trying his best, whether he's successful or not. He's throwing everything he can at the problem at the city level. And typically what used to happen is if you experience success at a lower level, you get elevated to the next level up. And you reward people who are doing good things and you punish people who are doing bad things. But in California, we do the opposite. The fact that we're even kicking tires on making Kamala Harris the next governor of California shows you how insane we are. This is a woman who accomplished nothing throughout her career, but is one of these people who always got the participation trophy and thinks that she won the game. And now, after failing as a candidate for the presidency twice, after being the vice president for a failed president, being in the United States Senate and doing nothing, being attorney general and doing nothing, she wants to be governor of California. Yet we have people like this who are doing everything they can to address California's problems, and we act like they're a nuisance instead of being a problem solver. That shows you how warped we are here in the sense that we don't reward this kind of achievement.
Adding it will only lead to more unhoused people without anywhere to go.
He doesn't really care about housing them. He says he does, but his main focus is let's just push them aside. Let's abate them, have them go somewhere else, not in the path.
They abate them when they refuse the housing, jackass.
Yeah. No, the housing isn't the issue. These people are on drugs.
We got to defund every single homeless nonprofit because you know what? If you're really a legitimate organization that does a lot of good, maybe you can get some private people to donate to you. But all these organizations are run on government contracts, and it's a bunch of BS.
They got to go.
Of visibility.
It's a long way to go for the park, but it's couples like the Mendezes who make sure there's always an olive branch, children in hand.
We do that too just to teach them young, and get them.
Wait, you're bringing kids to that park?
Yeah, that's a bad idea, lady.
Oh, boy.
Get them to know. Here, my oldest already knows. Once he sees, I bring the plates, they're like, okay, Mommy, let's go give it to our friends.
In San Jose, Jack Molman, Cron 4 News.
Don't take your kids to feed the homeless.
They'll learn a whole lot, all right, but not the lessons you're expecting. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. Programming note, we will be here live tomorrow, but we'll be taking the 4th of July off on Friday. And because of that, we're going to go ahead and play Jimmy Buffett music tomorrow, even though it's not Friday, which is when we typically play it. So if you hear Jimmy Buffett music tomorrow, don't think you're going crazy and it's a Friday. It'll be a Thursday.
We will have a best of the John Phillips Show on Friday. And let me see what I got in there. Ooh. We got the Javier Baccaria Hour. That's some good stuff. and the library condom thing.
What a great way to celebrate Independence Day.
And a Huell Hauser segment. It's a good 3 hours, so stay tuned for that on Friday, and we'll be back live on Monday.
All right, let's go to Mike in Livermore. Mike, hello.
Hi, John. I just wanted to say that it was a story about 15 years ago and talking about organizations that help the community, and it was the Salvation Army in San Francisco. And San Francisco used to either give them reduced rent on buildings or free. And because they wouldn't hire LGBTQ people for their organization, which the Salvation Army is a conservative church, that they basically kicked them out. And after that, the homeless problem in San Francisco just dove into the ground as being terrible. And instead of the city having free services, started paying all kinds of money, $300-something million and everything else, and they just killed themselves. It just shows how liberal policies just destroy the society at whole and then cost more money.
Well, and it was a twofer from their point of view. Not only did they get to kick the religious group, but they got to fund their politically connected friends who run these phony baloney homeless organizations that do no good.
Yeah, and one plug, and I'm not part of the Salvation Army, but the Salvation Army has rules. When you go into their things, you got to be drug-free, and they run programs, and they actually help people and have a much higher success rate than the government does on any of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, our buddy Tom Wolf, who's on this show regularly, he recovered and is in recovery thanks to going to the Salvation Army after being a homeless person that was on drugs in the Tenderloin. It's incredible what happened to him.
Yeah, what San Francisco basically does with all the needle exchange programs, and now they actually take these buildings and have free shoot-up areas, which is wonderful. I don't know if they're the same buildings, but honestly, they're not being kind or anything. They're just managing somebody's death is all they're doing and allowing them to live in squalor. There's nothing kind about it, and I've actually asked liberal people that before, and they kind of shrug their shoulders because they know I made a point.
Fun fact, the radio evangelist Amy Semple McPherson started out with the Salvation Army back in the day. Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. You know, I will tell you one thing the Salvation Army never did, though, Randy.
What's that?
How many Iranian nuclear facilities did they take out? What have you done for me lately? Let's go to Stan in Orange. Stan, hello.
Hey, Mr. Fellows, Mr. Wang. The Salvation Army does have a good band that marches in the Rose Parade, though. I'll say that. It's a good organization. And they're successful in a lot of situations. But the reason I'm calling is I'm a retired cop, 40-plus years in law enforcement. I've been retired for a number of years now, but I've had my share of dealing with the homeless people. And you were talking earlier about folks that want to introduce their children to the homeless folks. I'm affiliated with a church when I was working and in my retirement, and we tried to do outreaches to the community to be nice and stuff, and part of it is homeless. And there was quite a few families with young kids. They said, well, they want to, help out and show the kids how to be nice and Christians and stuff, and they want to take their kids into the creeks and under the bridges to help out these other little poor homeless kids and women. And, I'm looking at them like the man in the moon. I said, are you out of your bleeping minds? I mean, quite honestly, you don't see homeless kids under these bridges. And if as a cop, if I did see that, I'm taking that kid into protective custody. That you can't allow that to exist. And honestly, females, you do see homeless females, but they're not a major part of it either. It's mostly drug addicted or crazy males, usually young middle-aged males. So yeah, why, you want to take your kids to the homeless camps, do it at your own risk. I mean, it's not a good idea. But that's just my 2 cents.
Here's a question. When people take their kids with them to pass out food or supplies to the homeless, do they usually do it a second time?
That's a good question. I would hope not. I hate to say it, but it's hazardous to their health. I mean, these homeless folks, they're not healthy people. And would I want my little kids or young adult kids around them? Maybe I'm just the bad guy, but no, it's not a good idea. I mean, you got to help people out as best you can as long as they want to be helped, and that's where I think the Salvation Army comes in. But no, you don't take kids to homeless stuff. But again, that's just me.
Well, thank you so much for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Randy, when you were a child, did your parents ever take you down to the homeless parts of town to pass out goodies to the homeless?
No, they did not. In fact, after the LA riots, when we moved out of the city of Los Angeles and into the Santa Clarita Valley, we never left the Santa Clarita Valley. I don't think I ever went to Hollywood until I was 18 on my own.
Smart parents.